Hello, my name is Kayla Zapata. Based on the recent research that we have conducted, my team and I are qualified to speak about the Geneva Conventions. My team will introduce themselves now.
My name is Edith Martinez.
I'm Ross Varner.
And I'm Ray Velez.
The Geneva Conventions and their additional protocols are a body of international law, also known as a humanitarian law of armed conflicts. The book, The Geneva Conventions Under Assault, states that as the first set of the international treaties to address humanitarian issues, the Geneva Conventions have long been considered basic constraints on state behavior. No state has officially rejected their core principles. However, violations and non-compliance are prevalent in various conflicts. The Geneva Conventions aim to establish minimum protection standards of human treatment, and fundamental guarantees of respect to individuals victimized by armed conflicts. The original Geneva Convention was initiated by what is now the International Committee for the Red Cross and Red Crescent. Was adopted in 1864 to establish the Red Cross emblem, signifying neutral status and protecting the medical services and volunteers. This convention produced a treaty designed to protect wounded and sick soldiers during wartime because Henry Dendent was deeply affected by witnessing devastating aftermath of the battle, whereas soldiers were left without adequate medical care. The four Geneva Conventions were developed and adopted in 1949. They outline rules for protecting civilians and combatants during armed conflict. The first product The first protects wounded and sick soldiers. It guarantees human treatment, medical care, and protection of violence. The second convention adapts the first to armed forces at sea, the wounded, sick, and shipwrecked. The third protects prisoners of war. Prisoners of war must be treated humanely and never murdered, tortured, and no sexual violence. Prisoners of war must be provided with adequate basic needs like food, shelter, and water, and medical attention. The Fourth Convention protects civilians, those in the hands of adversity. They must be treated humanly, not subjected to murder, torture, or sexual violence. Because women and children are more at risk, they are especially protected. In conclusion, the Geneva Convention are a set of international laws that establish how soldiers and civilians should be treated during the wartime. Now let's learn about these conventions are related to the Ukraine war.
Geneva Conventions in relation to the Ukraine War. The Geneva Conventions relates to the Ukraine War because they set legal responsibility for the conduct of hostilities by everyone involved, including Russia, Ukraine, and any other party participating in the conflict. International bodies like the International Committee of the Red Cross, ICRC, monitors the agreement to these rules. Consequences. The Geneva Convention holds that individuals and states can be held accountable for violations, and such actions are considered war crimes in the Ukraine conflict. Accusations of war crimes by either side would be assessed under the framework of these conventions. Violations can lead to the international investigation and prosecutions. Prosecutors. These could be led by the International Criminal Court, the ICC.
Grave breaches are considered war crimes, and they are like grave breaches of the Geneva Convention, such as willful killings, sexual crimes, torture, and inhumane treatment. But the Geneva Convention does not have a specific protocol for or specific penalties, nor do they have a, a tribunal to uh, try offenders. But they do allow for universal jurisdiction, which requires states to search for and punish those who have committed grave breaches of the Geneva Convention. So it's up to the states to create their own laws to determine what they consider specific grave offenses. And then it's up to the states to search for and punish those who commit the grave offenses. War crimes are held under a different jurisdiction than criminal law. But the Geneva Convention does have a specific order for international humanitarian law, which states that first the state must enact national legislation at the state level. Then they must seek and prosecute the perpetrators of grave offenses or of the nationally decided state crimes. And then third, they must use state military personnel to take action against perpetrators. And then fourth, the states work together to prosecute perpetrators.
Recent violations. In surveying these various crimes, it would seem that Russia today is committing three essential types of crimes: a war of aggression, war crimes, and genocide, and early in the war. A majority of member states in the UN General Assembly recognize Russia as the aggressor. Additionally, even though UN Security Council action is hampered because of Russia's veto power, at a Security Council meeting on September 27th, several states charged Russia with just ad bellum violations. In terms of Russia's crimes while conducting the war, the International Criminal Court and the UN's Independent International Commission of Inquiry on Ukraine's have documented evidence of acts that appear to constitute war crimes, such as indiscriminate killings and sexual and gender-based violence against civilians. Finally, more than 1 dozen states have submitted documentation to the International Court of Justice with allegations of genocide being committed by Russia in Ukraine. Even after all of the evidence and allegation, Russia has still not been held accountable for all of violations of the Geneva Conventions. In conclusion, the relevance of the Geneva Conventions to the Ukraine war highlights the importance of international law in modern conflicts, serving as a standard for judging the actions of warring parties and ensuring some level of humanitarian protection. Even in the midst of war, there is a lot to be done to ensure that the Geneva Conventions are followed.